to A Well-Designed Business. My name is Luann Nigara, and I'm so glad you found this podcast. Together with my husband Vince and our partner Bill, we have grown our company WindowWorks from the ground up. So I know and I understand the challenges you face in running your interior design business. I also know that your talent alone isn't enough to ensure your success. So on this podcast, we talk about strategies and practical steps to help you grow your business. But make no mistake about it, we have our share of fun here too, mixed in with those aha moments that I love so much. This isn't fluff. Nobody has time for that. Whether you are a new interior designer or a seasoned designer, I am here to help you create and to manage the kind of interior design firm that you dream of. It's straight talk and it's action. Are you ready? Let's get started. Hi, welcome to A Well-Designed Business. Today, Alinda Morris joins me. Alinda Morris Interior Design is located in Gig Harbor, Washington. Alinda and I met at Las Vegas Market in the summer of 2018, and then we had a chance to have a longer talk during the High Point Market that fall. And in those conversations, I could see Alinda was doing a few things right in her interior design firm. What you will hear today are some key things that I know from talking with you when I travel that you sometimes don't believe doing these things are a big deal. Or by doing them, it'll make a significant difference in your business. Well, Alinda shares with us the ways she has gotten very clear and very focused in the last couple of years and how it has made all the difference in the world in terms of peace of mind, profitability, and day-to-day project management and the experience her clients have when working with her firm. Take particular notice of how she set herself up for success with builders and other trades and how she now can ensure anyone in her business, whether it's an intern, who doesn't matter who it is, any employee, they know how she likes things done and they can easily understand how to be successful when working with her. It's good stuff. You know what else is good? Our sponsor, Kravet, that too. Have you explored the Kravet outlet yet? This month, Kravet's outlet is offering 90% off retail prices for select wall coverings. Check out exciting styles from Kravet, Lee Joffa, and Brunswick and Fee. Be sure to head to Kravet.com as these prices are only good until May 31st, 2019. Okay? And keep in mind that Curated Kravet has just launched a brand new collection of lighting and mirrors from designer Jan Showers. True to her spirit, this new selection features hand-applied glazes and finishes and sophisticated detailing. Explore all new arrivals from Curated Kravet, including lighting and mirrors from Jan Showers. Just go visit curatedkravet.com. Okay, looking forward to introducing you to Alinda. Hi, Alinda. Thank you so much for joining me on A Well-Designed Business today.
Hi, Luann. How are you?
I am good, and I am looking forward to this conversation. Yeah, you and I met a couple of times. Las Vegas, High Point Market, right?
Yes.
And I love it when I meet people and I just think to myself, oh, there's something going on there. And what I've learned is that there is a lot going on with your business that we can pick apart here. And what I find interesting about your business, Alinda, is you seem to me to be the exact epitome that I say in an affectionate way, run your business like a big girl, run your business like a big business, because you have a small firm, yourself and one other employee, right?
Mm-hmm. Yep.
But you are running it like a bigger firm. You've got your systems down, you've got your practices binder, you've got your hours tracking, you've got the things going on that often come harder to a smaller firm because why? Because it's easier for a smaller firm to just sort of not have it all locked down because there's only yourself for the longest while and yourself and one person. So you both kind of know what you're doing. But we both know that you can't go anywhere if you don't get it all down pat, and you have done that, and I love that. And on top of it, your portfolio is amazing. It's just gorgeous, and it's hard for I mean, it's just my brain almost goes, how does like one or two people even execute projects like that?
Slowly,
right?
Over long periods of time.
Yeah, right. And so let's talk about some of the things now. Let's talk about some of the practices or the habits that you have instituted that are reflective of my observation of you. What do you want to say about that, setting up your systems and your processes?
Well, I think that as a smaller firm, one of the challenges is, like projecting the idea of what I want the public to see. And I've really focused on creating a large presence in my area. And, I've invested in photography and all of that stuff. And then when it comes to processes, I started out as a kitchen and bath designer, and then within a small design build firm in my area. And I worked for them probably for 4 or 5 years and really developed construction sequence. And what I found was that a lot of builders didn't, the builders that I was working with, especially the main one, was very combative with designers. And I would ask him, what's your problem? And he would say, you guys design stuff that you can't build. You're unorganized. You come in the job and just create havoc, and it's a pain for me. And I said, okay, I totally get it. So one of the things that I did early on when I started my own firm is I wanted to have very concise communication, and I wanted my spec packages to be impeccable. I wanted you to be able to read them if you were an installer and you had the flu, or you were a little hungover, or you were in an architect's office, or you were the builder who was actually doing takeoffs and ordering the product. I wanted that to be impeccable. And that was the first process that I instituted in my company, was how are we communicating within our industry? And then I just kind of took that and when I do design boards for clients or things like that, I want that to be crisp and concise and the same every time. And that seems like a really simple idea, but that took a couple of years to get figured out.
Believe me, I can imagine that it did take a couple of years to figure it out. And so I'll just say, first of all, I think it's awesome that not only did you spend 3 or 4 years working in the kitchen and bath firm, because what an education, as you said, you learned the project management sequences, and I think that's awesome. I also think it's great that you like point blank just said to the guy, what is your problem? Right? Like, and he's part of the problem if he never explains how the problem gets solved. So although I will say that it's one thing to be, I have to say, as a vendor for designers, for window treatments, I absolutely have designers that are amazing. And when I say amazing, they're all amazing and talented. I expect that as a given, but that are amazing in their process. And then there are others that are, we're just like, yep, okay, this is going to be, upside down, left side, right. You know what I mean? It's brutal. It is brutal. But here's the thing. There's 2 observations coming as the vendor's perspective. Number one is, I have to say, even in my role now, where it would sort of be ever so slightly more acceptable for me to sort of say, do you think we could have a little powwow and talk about the way you run this, right? But that still is icky. Right. And especially if I don't even have that role. I'm the builder who, so I have to say, as a vendor, you would love it if your vendors honestly would say to you, your systems are, crap, and you make the project 10 times harder. But we're not likely to do that unless you ask us,
right.
Is this working? But I will also say you can't be combative for it. And that part pisses me off. Right. So I might not like the way you are in my system, and I might not like the way that you won't fall in and do things the right way, but I'm certainly not going to be combative to you, because that's just not right. It's not so. Anyhow, but moving on to what you said is that it took a few years, not a few minutes, not a few months to do that. So kind of take us back, Alinda, to that process, that trial and error. What would, like, if you can get specific, it would be really helpful for somebody who's listening and going, right, thanks for saying it, but how to do it.
So I'll give you an example. In the very beginning, I was so afraid to do a working drawing. I was so afraid to draw something that someone was going to build because I didn't want to be wrong. I didn't want someone to call me out. I didn't want to get sued. So I would make things super vague. And also as a designer, one of the things that I'm responsible for everything, molding trim, how this tile detail butts up in against this cabinet, how the light fixture is going to sit within, this wallpaper. There's so many different details, and I was afraid to say, this is exactly how I want this. So I would say, well, how do you think I should do this? To my vendors, I'd really lean into them, and I would say, what do you need for me to give me a really good install? What information do you need from me? And I would just give them the bare minimum.
Right.
So as I became more secure in my design ability, I would put in more information. So now when I do, if I'm speccing out a kitchen, I put the tile, the grout, the little metal Schluter detail, the installation notes. I mean, it's a lot of information. And I also in the beginning wanted that to be really pretty. Like I wanted you to look at it and go, oh my goodness, it's just beautiful. Sometimes you can't have both of those things. It's still, it's a document that is going to, a lot of people are going to use it. So as I become more secure, I don't want there to be a question. So I'm willing to take a little bit more responsibility. And that's what my clients are paying me for. And that's why builders and my vendors, a lot of times, are the people who are bringing me in on a project to help clean it up or get it moving or help the client to make a decision. I get a lot of work from those resources because of that. So as on one job site, I would see, I really should have added this information, or, I really should have, everything needs to have a description and an image and where you can purchase this, whether it's from me or a different manufacturer, what the stock availability is at that time. Do you need to order it 3 weeks in advance? If so, I highlight that in red because my builder is going to wait to the very last minute to order that tile because he doesn't want it sitting around, and he's thinking in his brain it's in stock, and it's not. It's a 3 or 4 week lead time. That needs to be very clear. So I think that part of it is trial and error, and the other part is just having a little bit, just being more comfortable in my own skin and taking responsibility for my own concepts and ideas.
I love it. I have to say, you know what? You guys that listen to the show all the time, I often talk about that interior designer architect that I've had this more than 25-year relationship of doing her window treatments, and she only takes on full projects, from designing the house on the piece of blank property to the interior moldings and trims and hardscapes, all the way to the interior soft goods and furnishings and lighting and everything. She literally furnishes a drawing for everything. To your point, if I happen to be there measuring for the window treatments at a certain part of the phase, and the guy is in one of the 15 bathrooms that are typically in the house, every single one of those bathrooms has her blueprint drawing on the wall, and then the detail of the tile on the drawing. And it's like, there's no debating it. There's no which way should I do the tile. There's no walking onto the project and going, I didn't want it that way. And then the builder looking at you like, lady, you didn't tell me, right?
Right.
And it's the same with the window treatments. We've worked together more than 25 years. She doesn't need to put her window treatments on a scale drawing, but she does. She absolutely does. And here's the thing about it. She's not afraid, to your point, to put on the scale drawing that the 2.5-inch tape on the lead edge is 2 1/4 inches from that lead edge. She's not guessing it. She's not leaving it to chance. And if I deliver and it's not there, she looks at me and says, it's on the drawing. And I'm like, yeah, you're right. And it's awesome. And that doesn't mean you need to be a son of a gun. If somebody makes a mistake and you walk in and it looks just as nice, you don't need to be the diva lady, right? But it does, to your point, you were afraid to do it because somebody would figure out that you made a mistake. But in taking the responsibility for doing it, you probably reduce so many of the mistakes.
Right. And that comes with experience.
Yes,
that comes
of course.
of really knowing, oh, this is how that should be. And that means I have to go back and figure out how it should be.
Right. It's a lot of work.
And I also need a client who's willing to invest in that design time and that process, because not every client needs that much information.
Well, that's another awesome point, Alinda, because to just say tile on the floor, chevron pattern painting, pointing east is a lot different than start at this tile on the top left corner and whatever. So what happens is so now we're in a chicken and an egg situation. Mm-hmm. So we have the beginning of our process, our journey as an interior designer, where our confidence isn't as high and we are leaning more on our trades to sort of guide us through and decide or specify the details. And then as you grow, you're more willing to and able to do it. Are you just because your expertise, your confidence and everything is, and I'm assuming rates are going higher, that you're automatically attracting a higher level of clientele and you're explaining to them, I could design this, the design for this bathroom could be 2 hours or it could be 6. If it's 6, it's going to be exact. And if it's 2, the tile guy might put it where he wants. Like, how do you get that? How do you express that to your client that it's going to be more hours, but the details are going to be there?
So that was a difficult transition, because I had the clients who would want me to just go pick out some tile. And I would say, and I still have clients that call and ask me to do that. And I said, well, it's a little more in depth than that. Now, because I have the work, I can say, let me show you a binder of what a bathroom that took 36 hours to design looks like 8 by 8. And let me show you a bathroom that took 10 hours to design 8 by 8. Let me show you the process of what that actual documentation, the file is very different. One is a binder, one is a little folder. What do you think is a good fit for you? Now I have that experience. In the beginning, I didn't have that context. So I would say, what's your budget? And I would kind of dictate, if a client, what's your design budget? And if they didn't have one, or I could, see that they were DIYers, I would kind of cater to them a little bit more. And as time went by, I just would not take those jobs as much.
Right.
I still will, if I really think I can help someone. I don't advertise that I do consultations, and I don't do paint consultations. But if I meet a client and know that I can solve some problems for them in a couple hours, and I can get them to the next step, I will do a consultation for them.
Okay.
But it's not the norm.
Right. You're not calling out for it. I love it. I have to say, Alinda, this is the first time that, and I'm going to do my qualification, it's the first time I've heard it. I'm sure there's others that do it, but it's the first time that I've heard somebody express. So a lot of people have said, I'll show them a picture of a room and say, this is a $20,000 living room. This is a $50,000 living room. This is a $100,000 living room. Which one do you think is your budget? That I've heard and had many designers relay as a valuable way to have your client start to really get a grasp on what is their budget, right? But I've never heard this level, showing the binder versus the folder, right? That is so visual to me, that if you're sitting there and you're saying to me, and I'm saying, well, why do you need 30 hours to design a bathroom? And you say, well, let me show you. When I design your bathroom and it's 8 hours, I'm going to tell them this. I'm going to give them a list. Here's the tile, here's the toilets, here's the tub, here's this. But when I design it and it's 30 hours, I'm giving them absolute spec drawings, where the toilet, right? So different, so clear. I love it. I love it.
Well, I usually will say, when I meet with a client, and whatever their budget is for a bathroom, say that it's, they usually have a number, and then I said, well, do you want me to tell you what it's going to cost? And they'll say, yeah. And I'll say, well, this is on average. On average, the bathrooms that I design are about $36,000. That's the average. It could be less, it could be more, so your design budget, you should have a portion of your design budget should be based on your overall budget. So if your overall budget for your bathroom is $10,000, you're not going to you don't want someone to spend 30 hours.
Right.
Designing it's not a good return on investment. So if you want this, you're showing me a picture of an $80,000 bathroom, by the way, Mr. Smith. But so if your budget isn't, I want to make sure that the client their budget for design work is accurate, and they're only paying me for those drawings. I'm not providing material. I'm not providing the plumbing fixtures, and that's different than the way that a lot of other designers work. And I understand that. But in the state of Washington, unless you're a licensed contractor, it's really the way that you're taxed is different. So I for installation specifications, they are paying for those ideas and drawings and selections.
Okay. And so then let's just dig right into there. So take us to the beginning of that conversation. You alluded to it after it started a little bit, but take us to the very beginning. So ring, ring, hello, interested in possibly hiring you for your services. You're talking, how'd you hear about me? You're gathering information that gives you background things that you're using to make the decision. Is this a DIYer? Is this a potentially a legitimate client of mine, a potential client of mine, right? Yada, yada. Now it's time
I'm going to go back one step.
Go ahead.
If I'm talking to you, that means that you've went on my website. You've already filled out the client questionnaire. I already know what you put in for your budget.
Okay.
I already know where your job is. I know there's quite a bit of information, and I do that to kind of field out the DIYers.
Okay.
And if you're willing to fill out that client questionnaire, then I know that you've spent 15 minutes. You're invested.
Okay.
So then I've scheduled a discovery call. So then we're talking on the discovery call, and I'm asking, so I see here that you've lived in your house 10 years and that so that's kind of how that conversation starts.
Okay. And when you have that on your questionnaire, tell me your budget. How many people leave it blank? How many people put in a silly number, like just to make so if your form is a required thing? How many people put in something that they really believe is reasonable, and how often is it not reasonable? So it's a question, but I know it's effective, but how often at face value is it effective? What's that look like?
So the way that it's worded is how many funds have you allotted for your project, including design fees?
Okay.
So they already know, it's already, as they're answering the question, they have to stop and think about it. And I have that questionnaire when I meet with them or when so a lot of times they always fill it out. I don't think I've ever had a client. But in order to get to that questionnaire, you've already read kind of that I like to do entire homes, or I have, I focus on doing one room, so by the time you've gotten down to there, if you're and you've seen my body of work, and they'll either say in an email, I have a very small job. Would you be willing to talk to me about it? That's usually what that email looks like. Or they filled it out and they've given me a reasonable number.
Okay. And so walk us through a little bit when all the things look right, like the questionnaire, there's no red flags in the questionnaire except for they say they want to do a bathroom and they say $10,000 and your typical bathroom is average 36. How do you start and handle that phone call?
So I would say, well, let's talk a little bit about your goals. I always my firm is very client based. So I want to, I get right into that. What is your goals? Is your goal to stay in this home for 5 years? Is this your forever home? Who's going to be using the space? I kind of talk about that, and then I will get around to the budget, and I'll say, so I see here that you've given me a budget of 10 grand. What do you think that is for? Is that are we doing a facelift? And then I'll just say, I would be happy to, go through my portfolio and tell you what that project costs and what the design time involved was on that specific project. Would you like to do that? And usually they'll say, yeah.
Mm-hmm.
And then I'll circle back to it and say, your overall investment's a little low at this time. I'd like to discuss that a little bit further and just talk about what your expectations are around that. Is that, and if it's a child's room or you're just doing a rephrase, I could say that. But if you're showing me, if you want that level, that's about the budget is. And then they'll either say, that's ridiculous. I did have one lady say, you're crazy, and hung up on me. But that was a long time ago, and it hasn't happened in a long time. Usually by the time clients have gotten to me, they're usually clients that are that are looking to spend that. They'll usually say, it's usually 30 to 50 is usually what I'm getting on a bathroom. But what I get is clients that have a great budget, but they want to do everything. They want to do the whole house for 80 grand. And then I have to come back and say, we're going to have to prioritize your list.
Right.
So when I meet with you before, so let's say that we talked and it went well, the discovery call went well, we've scheduled a consultation. At that point, I've sent you some homework. I've sent you what to expect, how long it's going to be, what it's going to cost, and it's going to say you're going to do a list of objectives for your project in order of what's important, and then it'll have like a little blurb that says, if you have structural components, those have to be worked out with a structural engineer. Like I can't do that at the consultation. And then, so they've already answered that for me. So when I meet with them, it's a very concise meeting. I bill for that meeting and I let them know that that's a working meeting. So we're going to dive right in.
Okay. I love it. So it's all about the communication at the beginning. We know that, right? We absolutely know that that's the case. And so when we get back to that original nugget there of really getting your systems finite, and it starts with having that experience with working in the kitchen and bathroom designer where it was construction firm and you understand the sequence of the project line and stuff. And now you're in your own business and you're doing this, and you said you start to really come into yourself and understand that the power is in being specific and in taking accountability for yourself and your designs. How did you begin to translate that to an actual written system as opposed to I just know what I do and how I do it?
I was working for a builder in my area, and I would sit down with them and say, how would you like me to present information to you? What is the most helpful for you? So we had that conversation, because in the beginning, when I started working with them, I was very new, and I would do, they would buy a 10-hour block of time, and then I would help their client, finalize some decisions to get them moving. And then if the client wanted to continue with me, they would work with me directly. So at first I would do a whole kitchen in 10 hours. I would give them a really loose sketch. I'd give them a door, a couple of pieces of tile, and that was enough. And as the scope of the projects got a little bit more big, larger and larger, I would say, okay, you're asking for more in-depth information. What does that look like? And one time a builder just said, here's a spec sheet from this architect, and it's really easy to work with. And I said, can you send me a copy of it? And they said, yeah. And I said, and I made my own. It's a spreadsheet, and it has all of the, and then it was still very light and polite. Mm-hmm. And then as the jobs got bigger, we just added more and more information to those packages.
Mm-hmm. I love that you just went and sat down and asked the person that you were, the one that you were responsible to supply the information to. How do you want the information?
I still have that conversation with builders that don't know me.
Right.
I still do that.
So in other words, as you've grown and you have your way of doing it, which was based on these conversations, you still don't make an assumption that that's the way they want the information. You still give the courtesy of how do you want the information?
Well, sometimes I'm working with a builder and they are working with a showroom who's going to handle all the deliverables. They're going to install the tile. They're going to, I'm just making selections. So that is, they don't need that full, the full meal deal selection packet. They just actually, but I also want to verify that that's going to be executed correctly.
Okay.
So if I need to shore that up, I can make that determination.
Okay. I love it. I think it's awesome. And then another thing that you have in your business, which I'm sure is part of this whole process, but you have an official best practices binder. Okay.
I do. I love it.
Yes. So tell us about this best practices binder.
So before I hired an employee, I had several interns. And every time I had an intern, and our area is, we have the Art Institute, we have a technical college, we have a state program. So there's a varied degree of education that you get. But every time I had an intern, I would have to start from square one. Right. And so I started developing this binder where, if I haven't, so it has one of the things that it has is it has all of my vendors and had who is the point of contact for that vendor? Is it a sales rep? Is it a showroom? Is it, is it a specific company? Who is your point of contact? How do you contact them? And how to access that information. And it just goes through, and it's organized by product. So here's who I like to use for custom fabrication. Here's who I like to use for window treatments. Here's who I like to get bedding from. Here's who I like for accessories. And then it's also within that, it's organized by price point. Here's my in-stock furniture, my 3 companies that I hit really hard. I get the best pricing with them. I know that their deliverables are good. Here's a couple companies that are more high end. So they'll have like little asterisks and it'll say like beach decor, or it'll say washable bedding, like high end washable bedding, in stock pillows. So they know, because I'm asking them to sit down and maybe I'm asking them to create a little concept board for a children's bedroom. I usually start with something small. So that way I don't have them they know exactly what I want from them. And then next to that, you flip the little tab and it says, here's our concept board. And this is what it looks like. And it says, it's an example of a concept board. And then in red, it'll say, always use this font. And we always use, New Century, and it's always 14 for the heading. It's always, this size and the information is the pictures. If you're going to show a client a picture, it's this scale. And it's always description, materials, dimensions, client price.
I love
every
it.
time.
I love
with
it.
my logo. And then they know exactly, so they can I can go do what I need to do. I can be here doing something else, and they are going to spend a couple hours putting that together, and they know exactly what I'm expecting. And then I have one for, I do a lot of furniture, which is very different from the specifications. So then I have my tile specification sheet, and I have a client intake sheet, and I have just examples of things, of how I like things. And then if I have an intern and she stays a couple weeks, great. If I have one that stays a few months, great. If, I hired a new employee, she went on maternity leave. I hired a subcontractor to do my CAD and 3D modeling. So I just handed her the binder and she said, this is amazing. I know exactly what you want me to do. And she works for 3 or 4 different designers in the area. And she was like, this is perfect. And There's not, and that has come from trial and error. I had an assistant, email a client and ask for wholesale pricing. And it was in San Antonio during a hurricane, and it was absolutely inappropriate. And I couldn't take it back. She copied me on the email. When I saw it go out, I was in a client meeting and I just wanted to throw up.
Wait, she asked she asked a client, or she sent a client wholesale pricing?
She requested wholesale pricing, like as if I was going to call a company and say, I would like to know how much this sofa is wholesale, and here's my vendor. She sent that to the client.
And she just sent it to the wrong person.
Yes. And the timing was so bad, Luann. It was just a cringe moment. And I thought, and I was so mad, and I got back to the studio and I realized, how is she supposed to know what the process is for doing that?
Right.
Because you just you just left her a punch list.
Yes.
You didn't give her the proper information.
Right.
And I said, that's never going to happen again.
Right. Well, you know what I say, because you listen to the show. You know what I say all the time is, I don't care what happens, whether it's in your office, it's between you and a client, between you and a vendor. There is a moment where you can trace back to the tiniest thing that you could have done differently, that it would change that outcome.
Yep.
Right? That's the thing. And it's like, you want to sit there all day and say, that's illogical what you did. Why would you think you would do that? But to your point, you looked right in the mirror and said, well, I've actually not supplied her with the process for doing it.
Yeah. And it changed how I worked with interns and assistants.
Right. Well, we always say all the time, it's, it is the basis for, because our biggest fear, our biggest challenge with hiring our next employee is feeling like we're so busy. We're at the point where we need that next employee and we're so busy. How am I going to have the time to even tell them what to do? By the time I tell them what to do, I could have done it and moved on. But not if you have the binder, not if you have the system, if you have the processes. Then it's here, sit down, figure it out. Tell me what you don't understand. Sit down, figure it out. Tell me where the stick points are. But that's a heck of a lot further down the road than let me just start with, this is how we turn the computer on. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah. And that means that I sat down and decided what I wanted to do.
Right.
And what I wanted my assistant to be able to do. Mm-hmm. And that was very hard because in one day I could be going from, a countertop template to, high-end furnishing show. I mean, the day changes so much. It's really hard to say this is how we do this because it's different for every project, right? Because it's a client-based experience and not this is our signature style. Not that there's anything wrong with that,
right?
But for me personally, that's just how I wanted to develop my company.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. So I love it. So you have your vendor list in there with the rep's name, the contacts, the passwords, all the things that are relevant in order to communicate with that. You have your tear sheets. I love that you have the font and the image size and the way, the information that you want included, your logo on it, and it is always the same. I love that because we all run into the person that works for us and all of a sudden they're doing this flowery thing. And, you're just, I remember even, it's so funny, even about 4 or 5 years ago, we had 3 women in the office working for me. Kimberly was one of them. We had Ann and Adriana was an intern then. And they all preferred and liked a different font for their emails. Mm-hmm. And I wasn't paying attention at first. I wasn't really thinking about it. And then all of a sudden, one of them, I think Anne, changed it to a different one again. So they all, and my point is I hadn't really taken notice that there was 3 different ones going out because they weren't that different. And then Anne changed it to this flowery thing. And I was just like, I can't even read that. Like, that's a business email. Like, stop. You know what I mean? Yeah. And so then I started to say, well, what font am I using? And then I was like, what? And then I was like, okay, let's have a powwow. I don't care what font it is of these 5 fonts, but we're going to pick a font and we're all going to have the same font.
Yes. And that's important because this is a visual business. What I'm giving my client most of the time is just a piece of paper.
Yeah.
It might be the idea of it. It might be this beautifully rendered sketch or this gorgeous, layout for their home. But essentially, they're just paying at this point until we get to the deliverables for the paper.
Right.
So it needs to look good. It needs to look as good as everything else.
Well, it's the truth. It's setting the stage of the expectation of the way everything else will be to come that are the tangible deliverables. Is the firm tight in all of its presentations? Does everything have that whatever your adjective is, whether it's elegant or it's classic or it's, formal or it's casual, but the point is that it could be all flowery language and fonts, but then it's got to be your brand. It's got to be the whole thing. And I think could tell that my brand is not going to be flowery. I was like, no. It's way too squirrely and swirly there. No. So I love it. I absolutely love that you give the thought to it. That's the really cool thing, Alinda. And so also in this document is you have how you want your kitchen and bath drawings to look, the title, the blocking, everything. You have a how to field measurement checklist. So smart. Love that. How to style. What's that? Yeah. How to style a project and then the photo checklist you all put in there and that the client gets the checklist for the photo checklist. That's neat. Tell us about those couple of things there.
So the client gets a different checklist because the client gets a checklist of what they need to do to prepare the space to be photographed.
Right.
And a lot of times I'll go in and have the place cleaned. Like I'll bring in a cleaning crew.
No way.
Let them. Oh yeah. Because if I have a client, like right now I have a client, she runs a hospital in Seattle. She's very busy and she's letting me take over her house for 9 hours. So she said, I don't have a housekeeper. So I showed up early and did some, it wasn't that bad, but she's lived in the house a little longer than I like to have people live in it before I style it. And it was,
Oh, for instance, you finished the project
yes.
and maybe the photos shoot was a week or 2 weeks, 3 weeks later.
It was 10 months later. It was
Oh,
a
that's a
nightmare.
long time. That's a
It
long
was
time.
too long. So I knew that I needed to bring in. So she had a list of what I was willing to do and what a list of what I needed her to do. I needed her to get all the Legos out of the living room, things that led that. And I am very specific. And then I told her how long we were going to be there. I had 2 different photographers coming, so I kind of gave her that. And then that's a different checklist than what I have. And then when I style a shoot, I do 2 different accessorizing. Usually I do the accessorizing of the things that the client wants to use. A lot of times it's their stuff. And I'm pretty nice about that. Like, I want people to have things that they love in their home. And then I tell them, now for the photo shoot, I'm going to bring in the $600 pillows. I'm going to bring in custom artwork. I'm going to bring in maybe things that you wouldn't expect. And a lot of times I do that for the composition of the shot. And sometimes I do it because that's, that for whatever reason, that's what I do. And then they have a list of everything that's on site, and they have an option to purchase it at that time.
So this person's 10 months out. Are there other people that you really like? I'm just hung up on that. I'm going to get a cleaning crew for you. Like, I just feel like somebody be like, are you kidding me? Is it just so obvious that it's needed?
I did a lovely house. It's on my website, and I did it for a client who homeschools 7 children.
Whoa.
That kitchen was designed to look good dirty. And everyone was on the same page about that. The children do a lot of the cooking. They do a lot of the cleaning. Everything is always sticky every time I've ever been to their house. They're the most wonderful people ever. I'm actually doing their second project now, just finishing it up. And so she had part of the room repainted, and it had only been 7 months. But sometimes these final punch lists of what we're waiting for take a long time.
Yeah.
And the client is living in that space. So I went in and had a cleaning crew come in and handle that. I think she took care of part of that. But then I'm happy to do that for a client because I want to make their life easy.
Right.
It's a small investment.
And she's probably thinking, could you come back next month and take pictures? Bring that cleaning crew with 7 kids.
Yeah, they're a darling family, but I also bring all of the flowers, and all of that stuff stays with them. I leave them a gift. Like, I want it to be, but I know it's a pain. If someone said, hey, can I have your house for, a day? It would be challenging for me.
Right.
And my house looks pretty good most of the time, but it would still be,
yes,
there'd be some cleanup that needed to happen.
Absolutely. No, I think that's awesome that you have that Now, how do you do that when you are pricing the project? Are you automatically allotting a percentage for these expenses? Do you just say, look, I'm going to put on, $5,000 at the end, and that's going to cover photographer, flowers, cleaning crew? How do you do that from that standpoint, budgeting it in?
It really depends on the project. If I have, like for that particular project, I had someone come in and photograph it very inexpensively because I submitted to a magazine and they published it. And I knew that they were I was almost sure that they were going to publish it. And then once they published it, I knew we were going to do a completely different photo shoot. So we actually had to shoot it twice. So for that, it depends on a couple of things. I would love to say that I'm so organized that I have, I take this percentage off the top and put it in an account, and at the end of the job, I reinvest it. I do that, but I also run my business on a cash only platform. So sometimes my cash flow changes and I have to make concessions. A lot of times, sometimes I'm the person in there cleaning. That's happened a couple of times. And, or sometimes it's me and my assistant. And so not every project gets the same level of photography. If I'm shooting something and I'm paying top notch, a lot of times there's a licensing agreement that has to be worked out. So I will actually have something shot twice. I'll have a real estate person come in and do a lesser shoot. And then I will have the more expensive photographer come in and maybe only do 6 or 8 shots. And the reason that I do that is because sometimes those are going to local publications and they don't have the budget to buy the licensing agreement. So it depends on a couple of things. How good is the end project really? What does it warrant? And how much am I willing to invest and what my cash flow looks like at that time?
Okay. And there is a big difference between a photographer that specializes in real estate and in interiors. And that's why the price is so different, right?
Very. I mean, I usually, if I'm doing a decent shoot, I'm usually setting aside about $2,000 or $3,000 for that experience. For the photos, that does not include me taking the day off. I know some people have suggested that I let other people style my shoots, but it really is enjoyable for me, and I'm kind of a control freak about it. And it's my investment. I'm the person investing, so I want it to look, I'm the one who spent all these hours on a fireplace detail. So sometimes someone would walk right by there and not realize what the work was that went into that. Right. So for me, I want the detail shot of that mantle, and it's really important to me. So I've already sent the photographer the shot list, and but I prefer to be involved in that process because it does mean a lot to me.
And that's another good point I was just making a note about. I know that I've interviewed both Stephen Carlish and Raquel Langworthy, both really, really high-end interior photographers. And part of their process and what they suggest for interior designers is exactly what you just did, that they want you to take, whether it's iPhone pictures, whatever it might be, send it over to them. Each of them have this process where they want the scouting pictures first. And if you're not schooled enough to actually know what the angles and the shots are, both of them will work with you on that. But I like that you do it, and you also put your list of must-haves, the shots that you absolutely want, right?
Yes.
Very
and I
good.
learned that by experience. I didn't know that. I had my own house, was won like Kitchen of the Year for Natural Home Magazine in 2006, and they sent out a very fancy photographer for their magazine, and he brought a stylist, and I was like, I'm an interior designer, I don't think you're going to need a stylist. And he just kind of laughed. And I was super new, and I watched her all day, and I took her aside and I said, what's a photo stylist? And she goes, okay, here's the deal. I have the degree, but I can't draw. Okay, so I style, and it works great for me, and it's my niche, and this is what and literally she stood there for 6 hours, and he would say, can you move that artichoke to the left like a quarter of an inch? Right. And she'd say, okay. And she brought beautiful things. She bought a couple of bar stools, and I mean, she made it look amazing. And I just soaked it up like a sponge, and I thought that's a like a little niche. It's so interesting.
It is. Well, I don't know if you remember the show. We also had Charlotte Savavi on the show, and she is a very well-known, very high-end stylist in the DC metro area, and she travels all over the country, but this is her thing. She will take the ordinary room and style it, the not ordinary room, your already elevated room, and style it to even be better. And the thing about it is I had a whole discussion with her about it, that the styling for a photo shoot is not the same as the styling for living, because what she explained was when you walk into a room, you take the whole room at its face value and the proportion and the scale of, the tchotchkes on the coffee table in relation to the lamp, in relation to the mantle behind it. But when you're taking a picture and you're slicing down, now all of a sudden that one thing that's in there isn't right. Something's wrong about it. And if you really are just married to the way you designed the full room, you lose the boat when you go to highlight it in the photographs. And it was a very good episode that she shared a lot of her expertise and her tips on that. And she comes from an editorial, an editorial background with magazines and so forth. So she has it from both sides. She styles it with boots on the ground, but she also had that experience of looking at the pictures and deciding what was photo worthy for the magazines.
It makes all the difference in the world.
Yeah, it's interesting. So, and it's just fun because, the thing is, I think, I remember when someone recommended that, I think it was Liza Jones, I want to say, recommended that, hi Liza, recommended that I interview Charlotte, because I remember thinking, well, isn't this crazy? Aren't all the interior designers out there going to be like, I can style my own pictures? Like, I had that same exact thought. And so it was a nice learning lesson for me too. Very cool. So, and then, So this is your best practices binder. Some of the other things that you are really very cognizant of are tracking your hours and your billable hours. And one of the things that I read was, I have this sentence that I borrowed from my husband. What does it cost us to be open? Right. So that's our thing. And I noticed that one of your things is how many billable hours do I need to work in order to pay my bills, which is the same thing. What's our cost to be open number? Tell us a little bit about your thoughts on that and how you've arrived at that and what that exercise is to teach somebody to understand it.
Well, a few years ago, my business dramatically changed because my husband was injured and he ended up retiring. But not getting his pension. So it took we went through a financial transition. And during that time, I started spreadsheeting, not what our budget was, but what actually we were spending. And I did it over a period of 2 years. I am not an analytical person. It might appear that I am, but I'm not. So I really have to work at that. So I did the same thing for my business. And I usually don't track I don't give myself a budget. Now I've done it long enough that I kind of know what the averages are, but I do the same thing for my business. And I have a small boutique studio on the waterfront in Gig Harbor, Washington. So it's 167 square feet, but it's beautiful.
Did you just say 167 square feet?
Yes, I did.
Wow.
And it's magnificent.
It's awesome.
Like a little jewel box. It's right on the water. I can literally take a walk, jump in a kayak and go, tool around the Puget Sound and come back and get back to work if I want. It's really lovely, but I'm paying for location.
Yes. Okay.
And,
okay.
So my overhead is low, but my expenses are not because I'm head of household. So that really was a turning point for me. And I cannot remember the show, but it was a light bulb moment for me on your podcast when one of your designers said that she tracked not just her billable hours, but everything.
Mm-hmm.
And I went back. I usually listen to you as I'm commuting back and forth. And I went back to my office and I sat down and I went into my calendar and I started color coding everything. And I realized that I work really hard. And I do a lot of self-care. I do a lot of massage therapy, acupuncture. So I started tracking all that. And I was like, you know what? That's a full-time job.
Keeping care of this person is a lot of time and money.
This is a very well taken care of person, personal trainer, all of these different things. And I thought, okay, we're going to clean this up. And so I track. I take my spreadsheet and I just I do it with my, my accountant at the end of the month. We reconcile the business so I can go through and see, but I still do what my expenses are. And, and then I take that number and I divide it by my billable rate. And you would think, I thought, I'm always surprised at the end of the week because I work all the time, what's actually billable. And it's always shocking to me. So now I have a little spreadsheet and, I start my work on work week on Monday and I end on Friday and I tally up that number on Friday and I circle it, what was billable this week. And I'm always surprised because it's not as much as I think.
Wow.
So it really keeps me on track. And then if I'm, if I have an opportunity to go do something fun during the week, I look at my billable hours. Where am I at? Well, maybe I can do that tomorrow. Let's focus on what we're doing right now and, and then we can make that decision. But at least I have the information to make the informed decision.
That's amazing. I love that. I think first of all, I think it's hysterical that you found out that you were taking such great care of yourself.
Yeah.
The rest of us are like,
great.
I'm walking around with, gray hairs 2 inches long going, come on, get this thing under control. But I have to say the lesson in there is that takes a lot of guts, Alinda. I have to say that takes a lot of guts to have the come to Jesus moment and track every hour on what you're doing and whether it's billable or not. And then to say, it's Wednesday. I'd love to go take a kayak ride and come back in an hour. Well, let's see. Where am I at? oh no, you can't have that today, lady. Right? Right?
Maybe tomorrow. Good luck.
Yeah. See, for me, I'm not going to really be tempted to walk out and go do something like that. But I could see how, even if I'm not billing hours to anybody, if I just were to say, well, did I spend 20 minutes doing this quote, or did I add the same rabbit holes that everybody else does. I'm in the middle of doing a quote, or in the middle of, maybe I'm pitching a sponsor, maybe whatever I'm doing. And then all of a sudden there's the email pop up and you're like, oh, okay, let's go take care of that. That'll take 2 seconds. Right. And, it takes a lot of nerve to really look in the mirror and be fully accountable. But at this point, the reality is the mechanism is that that on a weekly basis, whatever it is, whether it's 10 hours, 20 hours, or 30 hours, that's your minimum level in order to pay the bills for your home and your business.
Yeah, it's 14.4 hours.
14.4 hours a week. And as soon as you are under that, you didn't make your money that month.
Then I'm borrowing from myself. I'm borrowing from my savings. My daughter's tuition is due for college. I'm pulling that from somewhere, and it's a level of stress. And I would rather, and again, I'm not an analytical person, but out of necessity, I would rather just know that this is where I need to be.
I love that. I'm borrowing from myself. That's so smart. It's so smart. You're not hiding. You can't hide it. It comes from somewhere. And you're so smart to recognize that it just comes from you. It comes from you. Yeah, I love it. See, we do the same, we do it differently in that we know our cost to be open number. And so every single day we know for us, it's not billable hours, it's sold projects, right? And it's sold projects at a certain gross margin. Because if I sell $400,000 in a month, but my gross margins are in the can, well, whatever. I'm just washing money. I may as well be in the mob and just be a money launderer. It doesn't matter. I'm not keeping any of it, right? Washing your money, putting it back out. I guess that's not going to get it.
I do sell product, and I keep that in a separate pile of money, because I could have a project. Right now I have 2 projects that I presented and were approved before in December, and both of them are sitting, and they both, if I combine them, it'd be about $38,000. And those jobs are just sitting. They could sit for another 6 months. So I do have billable. I have billable, and then I also have product, and I have a very a comfortable profit margin in those. And so when I get those jobs, I take a portion of that and reinvest it back in my business. But those aren't, I'd love to say that I do, one every month. Sometimes I do, sometimes I don't.
So when you are talking about that, so you've taken the money to buy the product, but you're not at the point to buy the product yet. Is that what you're describing? You took the money in December, but we're not purchasing the product just yet. Is that what you mean?
No, the client has approved the project. They want all the furniture, but they have not paid for it yet.
Oh.
So it's an invoice that's just sitting, and one of them, he just got a little freaked out because his remodel ran over, and the other one was going back and forth with her contractor finishing up a project, and she really wasn't sure what the finished the total was going to
be there.
And then there was a dip in the stock market, and so they're just sitting. They could go. I could get a call tomorrow and a check, or I could not.
Right, and so we don't count that as our in the bank money. No.
And then when I get that money, then that's a different story. When I get that money, it doesn't go in the same place as my billable hours. It goes to a separate account, and then it's kind of like the profit first, where I take the billable product, and then I take a portion of my profit and reinvest it in my company.
Perfect. I love that. And of course, we all know that we've got Michelle Williams that's been on the show 2 or 3 times, and she's one of the co-authors in my upcoming book. Yes. She is a certified Profit First coach. And of course, she now has her own podcast, Profit is a Choice. And that's exactly what she, really recommends you do. It's what the Vincennes does at Window Works. Certain monies go to this account, certain monies go to that account. And it is the way to keep yourself, on the straight and narrow, and so that you don't take a $40,000 deposit on $80,000 worth of product and think that you're running off to the beach. You know what I'm saying? And it's like, no, we got to do that. So that's awesome, Alinda. I mean, my goodness, I know that I could keep asking you question after question. You have so many good observations. What I love is that you take the time to see and experience. It sounds like to me that you've taken the time to see and experience challenges and have that, like, this isn't working moment. And then instead of just keep on the treadmill of circle after circle after circle of doing it, a way that's not right and not, productive, you sit back and you look at it and you analyze, and how else could it be done? And you're not afraid to ask different people for their advice and their opinion on it, on what would make their life easier and how could you fit into it. I think it's really, really, really spectacular the way you've grown and run your business. It's just awesome. Good for you.
Thank you.
Yeah.
I will say that I absolutely love design. I'm one of these people that geek out at IKEA. I love super high-end design. I just love it. And that's what I want to spend my time doing. So without just taking a quick look at these other things and developing this process, I would just be doing that all the time. And I would never get to do the part that I absolutely love. I would pay someone to do it. And that would be sad for me. Right. I don't want to do that.
Right. No, that's the whole premise, right? That if we're passionate about what we're doing, if we don't do it efficiently, then we don't really get the chance to do it because we won't sustain our business. So it's awesome that you recognize that what you love is the design. But in order to keep doing it, you've got to lock your systems down and have a way of doing it so that you can have the time and the money to do the design. Exactly right.
When I hired my assistant, I said, if you work for a firm and there's 7 people working at that firm or 15 people working at that firm, you could not know what you're doing for quite a while. And it's going to take them a minute to figure it out. I'm going to know immediately because I'm the only one here. It's just me and you.
Right.
So either you're going to be outstanding and grow and I'm going to help you and support you, or it's not going to work. Right. And that's why, because this is really my thing.
Right. Right. That's so terrific. That's so terrific. I love that because it's it sets the bar of expectation, and that you have an expectation of having an outstanding employee, that you're willing to put the time, energy into creating that experience for the employee, and that you've done a lot of hard work to get to the point that you can do that. But don't phone it in because I'm here and I'm going to notice it. Yeah. No, I know. I love it. I think it's great. So awesome. Thank you. You get a hashtag smart lady, Alinda.
Yay. Follow me on Instagram. Alinda Morris.
That's it. Thanks tons for coming. I'm looking forward to seeing you.
Yeah. I love listening to you, and I get so much out of your podcast. A lot of these things I've implemented because of your show.
Oh, thank you.
So I really will listen to your show, and I'll be off somewhere and I'll pull over and I'll make some notes and I'll come back to my studio and I'll re-listen to it and I'll be encouraged. I'm like, I can do that. And Michelle Williams is lovely. She's great. And I really, I love how business savvy you are, and just that you're right to the point. I get a lot out of it, and it really has helped me take my business to the next level. It really has.
That's awesome. Thank you so much for saying that.
I'm really grateful for you and your podcast.
Well, thank you. I have to say, I really do appreciate your sharing all that with me, because to me, hearing that, and when people say it on Instagram or Facebook or on iTunes, whatever it is, it's like when you go in and see your room finished and your client looks at you and says, I love it. It's what you do it for, right? There's no reason to sit here and do this if you out there are not actually, like I always said, don't leave it in a notebook. Do it. Don't just be impressed by what your colleague told you. Do it. You know what I mean? So I think that's awesome. And you're my favorite kind of person, the kind of person that does not only understand the value of what each of the guests are sharing, but that you take the action to do it. So that's awesome. All righty. Well, you have an excellent day. Okay, Alinda?
Thank you so much. Thank you. This was really fun. I really enjoyed it. So you have a good day too. Thanks.
Do you see what I mean? So often when we think and we feel things are out of control in our business, we think the solutions need to be major changes. We look to hire a coach. We buy courses or books. We, for the lack of a better word, want to make a grand gesture. We do something we wouldn't normally do. We spend money on it and we expect this to be the magic pill. I said it in my first book and I repeated it in my second book specifically because it is so true and so germane to our success. The real key is you must do the work, right? It's as simple as that. Coaches are great, books are great, podcasts are great, but you must connect it to the action, just like Alinda has. She has set up her binder. She has a direct conversation with her trades. She got real about her numbers. Do you have the courage to do that this week? I will tell you, if you are not making money, if you feel like you are spinning and you have never tracked all of your time for 1 week, doing this one thing will change your world. Maybe you do it old school way in a notebook. Maybe you make notes in your phone, or maybe you're using My Doma Studio where you can track your hours right there and attach them to each project that's appropriate while you're in there doing the tracking. And then you can see where you're spending your time. I loved it when Alinda said these two things. She loves where she lives and she works because she can easily take a kayak break or a walk break. But she knows until she hits 14.4 billable hours every week, she is borrowing money from herself. Do you get that? She's borrowing money from herself. As a matter of fact, I told Vin about this conversation after I interviewed Alinda, and I told him that sentence, and he just looked at me and goes, that's a great way to look at it, right? It's so crystal clear. That's facing the music right there. And this connects you to what I say. When you decide to pay yourself every single week, I don't care if you start with $100 a week or you make it $500 or $1,500 a week. When you know that that check is automatically going to be deducted out of your account at the end of the week, you make different decisions during the work week. Your focus somehow gets very narrow. Okay? You say to yourself, I need to work on the things that make me money now. All right? So whether you look at it from Alinda's standpoint of view, where she's borrowing money from herself until she hits that hourly rate, number of hours, or you recognize that the motivation comes from knowing the money's going to come out one way or another, find the thing that unlocks that little aha moment for you, okay? And good for you, Alinda. I'm so happy to hear the way you're running your business. You hear new strategies, you listen to the experience of the designers ahead of you, and you make moves, right? And now, guess what, Alinda? You are inspiring someone to make a move. I'm sure of it. So if you need My Doma Studio in your life to save time, to organize your projects, and to get tracking your hours ASAP, go to mydomastudio.com/a-well-designed-business and start your free trial today. And yes, please, today, take Alinda's advice. Know what it costs for you to be open. Figure out how many hours you need to build to hit that number, and then set your financial goals so you can be on your way to a profitable year. There is plenty of time left in 2019 to make it real and to make it happen. Okay. All righty. That is the show for today. I want to tell you, we've got lots of things coming up. I'm going to be scheduling some one-day coaching opportunities, the Power Talk Friday Tour, which is the one-day coaching opportunities. Those are going to be coming out. I am also going to be announcing a sales course, okay, teaching you all of the ins and outs of sales. This will be a live coaching course via Zoom, okay? Lots of things. So here's the thing. Are you on my email list? You know that I send an email out once a week on a Wednesday or Thursday telling you what the shows are, but telling you if I have any live appearances or if I have any opportunities like this for you to get involved in. So you need to be on the list because I know that you're not always listening to the show in real time, okay? To be on the list, you simply text 444999. Enter into the text field Design Biz, DESIGNBIZ, okay? Design Biz, no caps, no spaces. It'll take you to one screen. You put your email address in, and then we'll get you on the list. I'm not going to send you texts, I promise you. It has nothing to do with that. It just gets you on the email list, okay, so you know what's going on. Beyond that, you always can go to my website, luannniagara.com, and click on live events or coaching and see what's happening. We're getting ready to put all of that stuff up on the website, okay? All righty. Thank you for joining me today. So much fun. I'm so glad that you were with me. I hope that Alinda has inspired you to do something to make a change in your business, because that's the key. It's the action, right? You have to decide. You have to decide to be excellent. Thank you so much for joining me again today. This podcast is a production of WindowWorks, your resource for custom window treatments and awnings. To learn how we can help you on your next interior design project, go to www.windowworks-nj.com. And if you're interested in working with me on your business, either through masterminds or one-on-one coaching, or you want to know how to get my book, The Making of a Well-Designed Business, or you just want to know what's going on in the podcast land and where I'm going to be, all of that is found at luannniagara.com. Thank you so much. Have an excellent day.